The docking clamps struck the hull of the UNS Meridian with a sound like a judge's gavel. Elias Rourke felt it through the soles of his boots before the ship's systems finished translating it into a clean green line on a display. The station outside, Caro's neutral hub, had been described in briefings as a marvel of interspecies cooperation. The first thing Elias saw through the viewport was a gun turret the size of a city bus. The second was the way it tracked the Meridian without shifting its barrel. Smooth as a thought, silent as suspicion. "Welcome to civilization," Elias muttered. Behind him, Ambassador Shohana Iqbal adjusted her collar like she was preparing for a televised debate rather than a meeting with an empire that measured diplomacy in blood. She looked calm in the way surgeons looked calm. Focused, precise, determined not to notice the screaming. "You sound thrilled," she said. Elias checked his wrist slate one last time, confirming his security feed access. "Just allergic to places that smile while they aim." Shohana's gaze followed his toward the viewport. Her expression didn't change, but the smallest tension pinched the corners of her eyes. "It's neutral territory," she said. "Neutral doesn't mean safe." Elias unsealed his weapon locker, hesitated, then sealed it again. "Dominion rules. No firearms on the station. It means everyone brought their knives and agreed not to call them knives." Their escort team filed in, 2 more security officers and a pair of treaty aides carrying cases that looked far too light to contain Earth's future. The aides talked in careful tones, rehearsing phrases meant to sound cooperative but firm. Elias listened the way he listened to storms, not for the thunder, but for the direction it moved. The airlock cycled. Cold, filtered atmosphere rushed in with a sterile tang that reminded Elias of hospital corridors and polished graves. The ramp lowered, and Caro's station revealed itself. Cathedral-high walls of brushed alloy, arched supports glowing with soft white light, and an enormous corridor that could have swallowed the Meridian whole. And waiting for them. Not a welcome committee. A formation. Dominion guards stood in symmetrical lines, bodies wrapped in dark metallic armor that reflected the station's lights like oil on water. Their helmets had no visors, only smooth faces shaped into featureless masks. Weapons were holstered, but their hands hovered near them with practiced ease. Shohana stepped forward, chin lifted. Elias moved half a pace behind her, close enough that if something lunged he could intercept it, far enough that she still looked like the one in control. A lifetime of escort work had trained him to become a shadow with muscle. A tall alien approached, skin a pale slate green, posture rigid. A translator halo floated near its jaw, a thin ring of hovering tech. "Ambassador Iqbal of Terra," it said, voice flattened by the halo into near-human tones. "The Dominion acknowledges your arrival." Shohana offered a diplomatic smile. "We appreciate the hospitality of Caro's station and the opportunity to speak in peace." The alien's eyes lingered on Elias for a half-second too long. "We have prepared your route," it said. "You will follow." "Not please. Not welcome. Follow." Elias felt Shohana's hesitation, the tiny moment when her instincts warned her that politeness wasn't being returned. Then she nodded. "We will," she said, because refusing a small demand was how larger demands grew teeth. They walked. The corridor seemed designed to impress. Transparent panels revealed massive docking bays, rotating habitat rings, and distant ships drifting like sharks around a feeding ground. But Elias noticed different details. Camera lenses embedded in ornamentation, doors without handles, the lack of civilians. A neutral station with no crowds wasn't a station. It was a stage. One of the aides leaned closer to Elias, whispering, "This place is quiet." Elias didn't look at him. Quiet means they've already decided who's allowed to speak. They entered a transit tube, an open platform with a faint gravity field. The station's artificial light slid across their faces in smooth gradients as they moved at an effortless speed. It would have been beautiful if it didn't feel like being carried into a mouth. Shohana leaned back slightly, voice low enough that only Elias could hear. "You're tense." "I'm alert." She gave him a sideways look. "Same thing, different vocabulary." Elias huffed once. "If you want a different word, try prepared." A soft chime sounded as they approached the diplomatic wing. The platform slowed. At the far end waited another group, this one more ornate. Dominion officials, their clothing layered with ceremonial plating, thin strands of metal draped like jewelry. Their faces were uncovered, and their expressions held a calm that didn't come from peace. It came from certainty. One of them stepped forward, taller than the rest, with eyes like polished obsidian. The translator hummed. "Ambassador of Terror," the official said. "I am Vizier Halrex, voice of the Vraxi Dominion." Shohana bowed her head the appropriate angle. "Vizier, we come seeking equitable relations." Halrex smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Equity is a fragile word," he said. "Often mistaken for entitlement." Elias watched Shohana's shoulders remain level. She didn't flinch. "Good. Any sign of discomfort would be harvested. Then allow us to demonstrate our intent," Shohana replied. "We offer trade corridors, scientific exchange, and mutual defense cooperation." Halrex raised a hand, stopping her like she was a singer interrupted mid-song. "Terror is untested," he said, almost gently. "A world newly arrived among forces older than your recorded history. You seek recognition." Shohana's smile tightened. "We seek partnership." "Partnership," Halrex repeated, tasting it. "The Dominion recognizes only one method of proving worth." A ripple of motion passed through the officials behind him, like anticipation. Elias felt his stomach sink, not from fear but from confirmation. He'd been waiting for the blade. Here it came. Halrex gestured toward the wall. A display came alive, showing a circular arena. Bright lights, a ring floor marked with concentric patterns, and crowds arranged in precise ranks. "The Oath Ring Protocol," Halrex said. "An honorable contest. 2 champions. 1 outcome. The treaty is written in the winner's name." One of Shohana's aides sputtered, unable to stop himself. "That's barbaric." Halrex turned his head slowly, and the aide shrank as if a shadow had fallen on him. "Barbarism," Halrex said, "is refusing to accept the standards of those who would allow you to exist." Elias stepped forward just enough to draw attention away from the aide. "How many have died in your standard?" Silence hit the room like a vacuum seal. Shohana shot him a warning glance, but Elias didn't retreat. He asked questions for a living. Some answers kept people breathing. Halrex's gaze settled on him. "You are not the ambassador." "No," Elias said. "I'm the part that carries her out if this becomes something else." A few Dominion officials clicked softly, either amusement or irritation. With aliens, it was often both. Halrex's smile returned. "Your concern is unnecessary. The protocol is regulated. It ends when one yields." Elias nodded once. "And if they can't?" Halrex's pause was half a heartbeat too long. "They will be assisted," he said. That word, assisted, was a coffin with a ribbon. Shohana inhaled carefully, choosing each next word like stepping across glass. "Vizier Halrex, Earth does not settle treaties with violence." Halrex spread his hands. "Then you will forfeit. And the Dominion will draft your terms as compensation for your incompatibility." One of the aides whispered, horrified. "That's extortion." Elias didn't disagree. He just watched Shohana's face turn still, the look she wore when she reached the end of negotiation and found a wall instead of a door. She asked, quietly, "Who is your champion?" Halrex's eyes gleamed. "Kazuun," he said, reverent as prayer. "The Unbroken." Elias had heard the name in briefings. Everyone had. It was spoken across trade networks the way sailors spoke about storms that never missed. Shohana held her composure long enough to nod. "We will confer." Halrex inclined his head. "You have until the station's 3rd cycle bell." The officials turned as one and left, flowing away like dark water. The moment the doors sealed, the room exhaled. Shohana faced her team. "Options." Aide 1 spoke first. "We refuse and surrender by default," Elias finished. Aide 2 looked pale. "We can't win. They know we can't." Shohana's jaw tightened. "We don't know that." Elias pulled up the classified footage on his slate and projected it onto the room's central display. The video showed a ring. A challenger. Then Kazuun stepping forward, huge, stone-skinned, impossibly calm. The challenger threw the first strike. Kazuun caught the arm, twisted, and the sound of bone breaking carried through the recording like a snapped branch. The challenger screamed. Kazuun didn't change expression. He simply began dismantling a living body the way a mechanic dismantled a machine. When the footage ended, nobody spoke. Shohana's voice came out strained. "That's murder." Elias looked at her. "It's policy." She swallowed. "We need a champion." Eyes shifted around the room, avoiding each other like the idea itself was contagious. Elias stepped forward before hesitation could become panic. "I'll do it." Shohana stared at him. "Elias." "I know," he said, cutting her off gently. "I'm not your best fighter. I'm not even your bravest." He touched the slate, shutting off the frozen image of Kazuun mid-kill. "But I'm trained to stand between you and whatever comes through the door." One of the aides whispered, "You'll die." Elias didn't correct him. He didn't promise miracles. He didn't sell hope like a product. He only said, "If I don't go, we lose without even trying." Shohana's eyes searched his face, trying to find recklessness. She found none. Just resolve. Finally, she nodded once, sharp as a stamp sealing a document. "Then we do this properly," she said. "We learn everything we can. We don't walk blind into their ritual." Elias gave a short, humorless smile. "Too late for blind. But we can avoid stupid." Outside, somewhere deep in the station's spine, a distant bell sounded. Low, resonant, like the beginning of a countdown. Elias rolled his shoulders, feeling the weight of the coming hours settle into his bones. He wasn't afraid of pain. He was afraid of freezing again. And this time, he promised himself. Nothing would pass him. Elias spent the hours before the duel doing everything a sane man would do if he wanted to stay alive. He didn't pray. He didn't write a message home. He didn't stare into a mirror and pretend fear didn't exist. He stretched. Slow, deliberate movements, hips, shoulders, wrists, working through ranges that kept joints obedient under stress. The small injuries from training and travel complained in dull aches. Elias listened to them the way he listened to an engine. Not emotionally, but attentively. Pain was information. Ignoring it was how people got buried. A knock came at the door. "Come in," he said. Ambassador Iqbal entered without her aides. Without her calm mask, she looked younger, not by years but by vulnerability. She held a small case in both hands. "I had medical issue you should know about," she said. Elias sat on the bench and kept wrapping his hands. "My ribs aren't broken yet, Ambassador. Give it 10 minutes. That isn't funny." He glanced up, then softened his tone. "Sorry. Habit." She stepped closer and opened the case. Inside lay a thin strip of fabric, dark, flexible, almost weightless. "Impact weave," she said. "Our engineers upgraded it for this trip. It won't stop a direct hit from a creature like that, but it can reduce tearing. It fits under the ceremonial garments." Elias ran fingers over the material. It felt like silk with a hidden bite. "You want me to wear it," he said. "I want you to walk back out," she replied. He didn't thank her. Gratitude made people sentimental. Sentiment got them sloppy. Instead he nodded once and began slipping the weave under his gear. Shohana lingered, then spoke with careful honesty. "I've read every summary," she said. "The Dominion doesn't lose. Not like this." Elias tightened the last wrap. "Then they'll be surprised." She studied him. "You're confident?" Elias looked her straight in the face. "No." The word hung between them, clean and undramatic. "I'm prepared," he continued. "There's a difference." Shohana exhaled, almost relieved by the lack of heroic nonsense. "They're expecting you to fight like everyone else." "Then I'm already ahead," Elias said. She hesitated. "What's your plan?" Elias flexed his fingers, then stood. "Get close. Hit first. Don't play their tempo." Shohana's brows knit. Is that strategy or instinct? Both, he said. Humans are good at acting before our thoughts slow us down. She gave a faint, grim smile. That's comforting. It should terrify them, Elias replied. A chime echoed in the corridor outside, an elegant sound that felt like a warning disguised as music. The station had entered its third cycle. Time. Shohana's eyes sharpened. Elias. If things go wrong, if the Dominion tries to twist this. They already have, he said. But it won't matter once they see the result. She stepped forward, lowered her voice. You're not only fighting a champion. You're fighting an empire's story. Elias adjusted the crimson cloak pinned over his shoulder, feeling its weight settle like a ceremonial lie. Good, he said. Stories change. He walked out before she could say anything else. The route to the arena was a long corridor that narrowed as if the station itself wanted to guide him into one direction and never let him return. Dominion guards flanked him on both sides. Not to protect him. To ensure he arrived intact. Elias kept his pace steady, eyes forward, breathing slow. Every step echoed. At the end stood massive doors, black alloy, split down the middle, engraved with symbols that looked like scars carved into metal. A faint vibration thrummed through the floor beneath them. Not noise. Anticipation. A Dominion attendant waited near the threshold, thin and solemn. You will enter when summoned, the attendant said. You will stand at the center. You will acknowledge Karzoon. The bell will sound. You will begin. Elias tilted his head. Begin how? The attendant blinked, confused. With honor. Elias gave him a small smile. Sure. The attendant walked away as if he'd finished a sacred instruction. Elias rolled his shoulders once, felt the impact weave against his skin, then stared at the doors. Through the seam between them, light spilled like molten silver. He heard the crowd, not cheering, not chanting yet, but humming with restrained violence. Thousands of voices held back behind discipline and certainty. The station AI announced something in a language Elias didn't know. The translator in his ear converted it a heartbeat later. Champions to the ring. The doors split open. The arena was larger than footage could convey. A vast circular hall with layered balconies rising into shadow, illuminated by rings of light overhead. The floor was polished alloy etched with concentric patterns, a geometry designed to pull attention toward the center. Thin lines of glow traced the circle like veins in a machine. Across the distances stood rows of Dominion soldiers, evenly spaced, armor identical, weapons docked at their sides. They looked less like guards and more like an audience trained to kill on command. Elias walked forward alone. The crimson cloak moved behind him, the only warm color in a world built from cold metal and cruel symmetry. Fog drifted low over the floor, catching the light in faint halos. He heard whispers ripple through the stands. Human. Small. Soft. The station's voice boomed again, translating itself as it spoke. Representative of Terra, Elias Rourke. Elias reached the center circle and stopped on the mark. Silence gathered. Heavy. Then the far gates opened. Karzoon entered. No dramatic music needed. The Titan carried his own gravity. 3 meters of hardened muscle and blue-gray stone skin, shoulders broad enough to shade a vehicle, arms hanging heavy as piled steel. His belt was plated, engraved, ceremonial, an empire's ornament on a living weapon. He walked like the floor owed him obedience. And the crowd finally reacted. Not cheering. Reverence. A chant rose, rhythmic, measured, a title spoken like a law. UN Broken. UN Broken. Elias didn't move. He watched Karzoon approach with the calm focus of a man assessing a storm's direction. Karzoon halted a few steps away. He looked down at Elias the way a predator looked at prey that refused to run. His voice carried without effort. So, Karzoon said, Terra sends a man. Elias kept his tone plain. Seems fair. A low rumble of laughter moved through the audience. Karzoon's mouth curved slightly. Fairness is not what this is. Elias lifted his gaze. Then what is it? Karzoon raised one enormous hand, Palm outward, ceremonial. It is instruction. Elias stared at the hand. The handshake posture. The salute. The ritual pause. Everything about it assumed the other fighter would comply. Elias didn't. Not yet. He asked quietly, "When does this start?" Kazuun's eyes narrowed, not understanding the question. The station trembled. A pulse rolled through the arena, deep and subsonic, rattling Elias's teeth, vibrating his ribs. The bell wasn't heard. It was endured. The crowd stiffened. The sound was meant to prime fear, to freeze the body's choices. Kazuun's hand remained raised, confident. And in that first moment, the moment the Dominion believed belonged to ceremony, Elias moved. His foot slid forward, weight shifting smoothly. Hit one. His palm snapped into the soft notch at the base of Kazuun's throat. Not a killing blow, just enough to disrupt breath. Kazuun's eyes widened a fraction. Hit two. Elias rotated his hips and drove a tight hammer fist into the jaw hinge. A crack of impact, sharp as a snapped twig. Hit three. He stepped in closer, elbowing the sternum with short-range violence meant to shock the body backward. Kazuun's chest actually shifted. Hit four. Elias's knee slammed into the inner thigh, targeting nerve clusters that didn't care how big you were. Hit five. His fist hooked behind the ear ridge, where balance lived and confidence died. 5 strikes. Fast enough that the crowd didn't react until the last one landed. Silence swallowed the arena. Kazuun took half a step back. Not stumbling. Not falling. But moving away. A Dominion noble rose from the balcony, voice sharp with outrage. Dishonor. The station AI spoke immediately, calm and absolute. Combat initiated at bell pulse. First contact valid. Protocol remains intact. Elias exhaled through his nose, barely smiling. The machine didn't care about pride. Only rules. Kazuun stared at him now differently. His breath came heavier, slower, like a furnace adjusting. "You struck before acknowledgement," the Titan said. Elias kept his hands up, relaxed but ready. "You lifted your hand. I acknowledged the threat." Kazuun's expression shifted into something almost pleased. "Interesting," he said softly. "You do not know how to perform." "I'm not here to entertain," Elias replied. The Titan's smile widened, and the air around him changed. The ritual calm peeled away, revealing something older. Something eager. "Good," Kazuun murmured. "Now I can stop pretending." He lunged. Elias barely registered the movement before the Titan's arm swung in a brutal arc. The punch didn't aim to hit. It aimed to erase space. Elias dropped low, the air above his head splitting with a hiss of displaced force. The shockwave rocked his cloak. He rolled left, came up on his feet, and repositioned. Kazuun turned toward him with unnerving speed for something so large. "You feel quick," Kazuun said. "Like vermin." Elias wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his wrist. "Vermin survive." The crowd began murmuring again, uncertainty seeping through their formation. Kazuun stepped forward, slower now, recalculating. Elias realized with a chill that he hadn't merely landed hits. He'd awakened curiosity. And curiosity in a creature like this was more dangerous than anger. Kazuun tilted his head. "You have my attention, human," he said. Elias kept his breathing steady, heart hammering behind disciplined ribs. "Keep it," he replied. "While you still can." Kazuun didn't rush again. That was the first sign the fight had changed. The Titan stood with his shoulders squared and his hands lowered, watching Elias with the calm patience of something that had never needed to hurry. The crowd, once a wall of certainty, shifted into a restless murmur. Dominion soldiers remained rigid, but the spectators above leaned forward, hungry for the familiar ending. Elias stayed light on his feet. He didn't bounce like a boxer. He didn't posture. He moved with the economy of someone who'd learned that wasted motion was how you got shot. Kazuun circled. Not widely. Not lazily. He narrowed the ring. Elias sensed it immediately, like a hallway shrinking around him. "So," Kazuun said, voice quiet enough to sound almost conversational, "you know where to strike." Elias kept his guard loose, palms open, ready to grab. It's not complicated. Everybody breathes. Everybody bleeds. Cousin's eyes slid over him. Not everybody matters. Then the Titan stepped in and threw a short, brutal strike. No sweeping arc this time, no wasted space. A compact hammer of mass aimed at Elias's ribs. Elias tried to slip aside. He almost made it. The fist clipped him anyway, grazing rather than landing clean, but even a graze from that much weight was a car brushing past at speed. Pain erupted across his side. Something inside him shifted wrong, sharp, immediate, personal. His breath vanished. He stumbled back 2 steps, boots skidding on alloy. The crowd sucked in air as one organism. Kazuun didn't chase. He advanced slowly, letting Elias carry the suffering. Yield, the Titan said, not as mercy, but as instruction. You have displayed spirit. Now you can stop. Elias forced air back into his lungs. It tasted metallic. He pressed his tongue against his teeth, checking for blood. There was some. He grinned anyway, a small crooked thing born from spite and adrenaline. Can't, he said hoarsely. Work contract. A few alien spectators made sharp clicking noises. Disbelief, maybe laughter, maybe disgust. Elias didn't care. He cared about staying upright. Kazuun's gaze hardened. You will break. Elias swallowed pain, turned it into fuel. That's the idea. Break something important. Kazuun's brow lifted as if Elias had spoken in a foreign tongue. Then he moved again, short steps, careful, forcing Elias to give ground. Elias kept retreating, but the ring's markings flashed beneath him like warning lines. He was nearing the outer circle, where the floor's glow turned brighter, as if the arena itself wanted to highlight the moment prey ran out of space. Kazuun was herding him. Elias adjusted his angle, trying to cut past. Kazuun mirrored him, blocking with minimal motion. The Titan wasn't only strong. He was learning. And that was worse. Elias's ribs screamed every time he inhaled, but he couldn't let his breathing show panic. Fear traveled faster than sound in an arena like this. The crowd fed on it. The opponent tasted it. He remembered Luna. Not as a story. As a sensation. A corridor full of smoke. Screams muffled by decompression alarms. His hands shaking as he tried to unjam a door while civilians pounded from the other side, eyes wide, pleading. The freeze that had gripped him, one stupid second of disbelief that things could be so wrong, had cost lives. He'd carried that second ever since. Kazuun took another step closer, towering, patient. Elias didn't freeze now. He stepped forward instead. Kazuun's eyes narrowed. Brave. No, Elias said, and snapped his hand upward. 2 fingers drove into the Titan's throat line again. Not a strike meant to crush, but to irritate. A distraction. A test. Kazuun flinched. Elias used the opening to slide left and smash a fist into the Titan's side, where rib plating met muscle. The impact jolted through Elias's arm like punching a stone wall, but the point wasn't damage. It was information. It was the message. I'm still here. Kazuun's response came fast. A backhand shot toward Elias's head, short range and savage. Elias ducked and felt wind scream past his ear. He came up inside the Titan's reach, pressed close where long limbs became awkward. He drove an elbow into Kazuun's abdomen, then followed with a knee, low, hard, aimed at the inner joint. Dominion spectators recoiled. Some shouted. Not in fear, offense. That kind of fighting wasn't honorable in their minds. It was animal. Elias didn't have the luxury of dignity. Kazuun's hands shot out. One caught Elias's forearm. The grip was instant, crushing, iron certainty closing around bone. Elias's arm screamed. Kazuun lifted him off the floor as easily as a man lifting a coat from a hook. Elias's boots dangled. The cloak tore slightly at the shoulder clasp, fabric fluttering uselessly. The arena erupted. This was the part they recognized. Kazuun brought Elias closer until Elias could see the texture of the Titan's stone skin up close, the tiny cracks filled with darker tones like cooled lava. Now you understand, Kazuun murmured. Speed is a child's trick. Strength is law. Elias's vision narrowed at the edges. His ribs burned. His arm threatened to snap. His brain did what it always did when death got close. It started solving problems. He didn't struggle wildly. Struggling wasted oxygen. Instead, he looked at Kazuun's collarbone area. The place where dense muscle anchored to structure. Where nerves hid. He shifted his body slightly, brought his free hand up, and drove 2 fingers hard into the nerve cluster beneath the Titan's clavicle. Kazuun jerked, surprised, not by pain, but by involuntary response. The grip loosened for a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. Elias slammed his head forward. The headbutt wasn't elegant. It was desperate physics, skull to face, intent to survive. Impact rang through Elias's skull. His forehead split. Warm blood ran down his nose. But Kazuun blinked, one stunned blink, rare as a solar eclipse. Elias dropped. His boots hit the floor. He rolled with the landing, trying to escape, but Kazuun's hand lunged again. Elias slipped low and behind the Titan's leg. He wrapped both arms around the thigh, not to lift it, impossible, but to anchor himself. Then he pivoted his hips and drove his heel into the side of the knee joint with everything he had left. A torque strike. A human trick. Ligaments didn't care about empires. Kazuun's leg buckled. Not fully. Not collapse. But the Titan staggered. His massive body shifted off-center. He took one heavy step, then another, trying to regain balance. The crowd's sound died mid-breath. Elias rose slowly, chest heaving, blood streaking his face, one arm held tighter to his body because the wrist didn't move right. His ribs felt like broken glass pressed inward. But he was standing. And Kazuun had bent. The Titan's eyes snapped to Elias with something new inside them. Not amusement. Not contempt. Recognition. What are you? Kazuun growled. Elias wiped blood from his lip with the back of his glove. Human. Kazuun straightened, though not as smoothly as before. His knee didn't lock perfectly. He hit it badly, like a king trying to ignore a crack in his throne. He took a step forward. Elias took one too, matching him, refusing to be driven again. Above them, a Dominion noble rose from the balcony, voice sharp and furious. This is impossible. He should already be broken. Kazuun didn't look up. His attention stayed locked on Elias as if the entire arena had narrowed down to one enemy. His voice was low, vibrating through the floor. You hurt me, he said. Elias nodded once, breathing through pain. Yeah. Kazuun's mouth twisted into a smile that wasn't friendly. Good, he said. Now I can kill you honestly. Elias lifted his hands again, stance tighter now, fighting through broken comfort. Come on, he rasped. Try. Kazuun lunged, faster than before, no ceremony left. And Elias, cornered by a Titan and an empire, did what humans had always done when the world decided they should die. He refused to cooperate. Kazuun came at Elias like a collapsing building. No warning stance, no measured approach, just raw intent condensed into motion. The Titan's footfalls struck the alloy floor with enough force to make the glowing lines flicker. The air shifted around him, heavy with momentum. Elias didn't retreat straight back. Straight lines were how prey died. He cut diagonally, forcing Kazuun to turn. The Titan swung anyway, a short hook that would have taken Elias's head off if it connected. Elias slipped inside the arc and felt the breeze tear at his hair. Too close. Perfect. Elias drove his shoulder into Kazuun's torso, not to shove him, impossible, but to create contact. Contact meant control. He used his weight like a wedge, then stabbed 2 quick blows into the Titan's ribs where the hide felt marginally less like stone. His knuckles screamed in protest, skin splitting under the glove. Kazuun answered with a knee. It caught Elias in the hip and folded him sideways. Pain flashed bright and cold, like lightning inside bone. Elias nearly went down, but he twisted with it, falling into a roll instead of collapsing. He hit the floor shoulder first, cloak tangling, breath knocked out again. The arena's silence thickened. 1,000 watchers leaned in, sensing the familiar slope toward execution. Elias pushed up onto one knee. Kazun grabbed him by the cloak and yanked him upright as if lifting a child. The crimson fabric tore with a sharp rip that echoed like an insult. The Titan's face was close enough for Elias to smell something metallic and dry, blood and heat and old violence. "You have spirit," Kazuun rumbled. "But spirit does not hold bones together." Elias coughed once, forcing air into lungs that didn't want to expand. "You'd be amazed what humans hold together with spite." Kazuun's eyes narrowed. "I will grind that out of you." He threw Elias. Not a strike. A discard. Elias flew through the air and slammed onto the ring floor hard enough to make his vision fracture into white shards. He heard something pop in his shoulder. For a heartbeat he couldn't feel his right arm at all, like it had been erased. Then the pain arrived. He rolled onto his back, gritting his teeth so hard his jaw trembled. His shoulder sat wrong, dislocated. Hanging. The easy choice was to stay down. The safe choice was to surrender. Elias stared up at the lights overhead, those bright circular halos that made the arena look holy, and felt the old memory claw up again. Lunar corridor. The second of frozen disbelief. The people pounding the door. Not again. He grabbed his own wrist with his left hand, planted his boot, and wrenched his shoulder back into place with a brutal jerk. A wet, sickening clunk. His scream stayed trapped behind clenched teeth. The sound that escaped was a ragged grunt, ugly and human. The crowd reacted, some recoiled, some shouted. Dominion spectators didn't understand self-inflicted pain as a tool. They saw it as madness. Elias got to his feet. Kazuun slowed. For the first time, the Titan hesitated, not because Elias looked strong, but because Elias looked willing to keep functioning even after his body protested. "You reset yourself," Kazuun said, voice touched with disgust. Elias flexed his arm once. It worked. Not well, but enough. "Field repair," he said. "You should try it sometime." Kazuun's mouth curled into a snarl. He charged again. Elias waited until the last possible moment. Then he stepped in. The move wasn't brave. It was necessity. Distance was death. Up close, the Titan's reach shortened, his mass became harder to aim, and his strength turned clumsy. Elias slipped under Kazuun's swinging arm and latched onto the Titan's wrist with both hands. He didn't try to pull. He rotated, twisting the wrist beyond comfortable alignment, forcing the elbow to follow. Leverage didn't care about pride. Kazuun roared and tried to yank free. Elias used the pull against him, pivoting his hips and stepping to the side so the Titan's momentum carried him forward. Elias drove a sharp strike into the Titan's neck ridge, right behind the jawline, then another into the ear canal area, where equilibrium lived. Kazuun staggered. Elias felt the floor sway beneath his feet, not from the station's vibration but from the Titan's sudden imbalance. The audience above stopped chanting. Even the Dominion soldiers, trained to stand like statues, shifted slightly as if some instinct had whispered, "This isn't supposed to happen." Kazuun swung wildly, fury overriding calculation. Elias ducked, but the backhand clipped his shoulder. Heat exploded down his arm, and stars burst behind his eyes. Elias didn't flee. He stayed close. He moved like a parasite that understood one rule: abandon contact and you die. He went for the knee again. Not the same strike. A new angle. He stepped behind Kazuun's leg and kicked the back of the joint with a sharp heel drive, targeting the hinge instead of the side ligament. Kazuun grunted, leg jerking. Still standing. The Titan reached down, trying to seize Elias's head like a trophy. Elias trapped the Titan's hand, slid his grip to the thumb joint, and wrenched sideways. The thumb bent too far. Something cracked, small but decisive. Kazuun's roar shook the air. His face contorted, rage spilling across features that had worn calm like armor. He lunged forward, trying to crush Elias with his body weight. Elias let him. He stepped aside at the last instant and used the Titan's forward drive to slam a shoulder into Kazuun's ribs, shoving him just enough offline to force a stumble. Not strength, timing. Kazuun's injured knee betrayed him. The Titan dropped to one knee. The sound of it hitting the floor was thunder. The entire arena froze. Elias stood panting, blood running from his nose, cloak shredded, hands raw. His ribs felt like they were trying to turn inside out. His body begged him to quit. But his mind was quiet. Clear. Kazun lifted his head slowly, eyes burning. "Finish it," he growled, breath thick. "Take your victory like a predator." Elias stared down at him. Killing him would be easy now. Not physically, nothing about this was easy, but mechanically. It would be the final act the Dominion expected. Blood sealing the treaty, death proving dominance. Elias didn't give them that story. He stepped back and spoke loudly enough for translators to carry his words through every tier of the arena. "Earth doesn't kneel," he said. "Not to giants. Not to empires. Not to myths." Kazun's lip curled. "You think words change the law?" Elias's breathing came out harsh, but steady. "No. Results do." Kazun tried to rise. His knee shifted. His balance failed. He pushed again, stubborn as stone, and Elias saw the truth. The Titan's pride was heavier than his body. Elias moved forward and stomped down on the back of the knee joint with controlled force, enough to fold it, not to shatter it. Kazun collapsed forward, palm slamming the floor, chest heaving. A bell pulse rolled through the arena. Not the beginning. The end. The station AI spoke with cold impartiality. Champion of Terror remained standing. Dominion champion unable to continue. Outcome recorded. For a moment, nobody reacted. The Dominion couldn't process it. Their story had no paragraph for this result. Then a wave of sound surged, shouts, anger, disbelief, scattered applause from species who didn't love humanity but loved seeing the Dominion bleed. Elias turned toward the diplomatic balcony where Earth's delegation stood behind transparent shielding. Ambassador Iqbal stared at him like she'd forgotten how breath worked. Elias raised one hand, not in celebration, but in signal. "I'm alive. That's all." Shohana's expression cracked. Relief flashed across her face, followed by something heavier, understanding. He hadn't just won a duel. He'd thrown a rock at the galaxy's glass ceiling. Dominion officials began speaking rapidly, furious, demanding protocol review, accusing Earth of violating honor. The station AI repeated its judgment without emotion, each repetition sharpening humiliation into something that would not fade. Kazun lifted his head once more, eyes locked on Elias with hate sharpened into purpose. "This is not over," the Titan rasped. Elias leaned down slightly, just enough to be heard. "I know," he said. "That's why I didn't kill you." Then Elias turned away and walked out of the circle while the crowd still argued with reality. Each step sent spikes through his ribs. His vision blurred at the edges. He forced his legs to keep moving anyway. Behind him, the Dominion's undefeated champion remained on the floor. And somewhere high in the stands, an alien voice whispered, quiet, shaken, reverent in the worst possible way. "Humans aren't strong." A pause. "They're unwilling to stop."